Buddha of the Basin here, July 31st. End of the month, wrap up. What have we learned this month? It's been a topsy-turvy month. Been a little bit nervy and topsy-turvy. A lot of rain recently here in Louisiana. Nowhere near enough rain in the southwest and the west. Plenty of heat, 100 degrees. Even on the coast of Louisiana where I am, it got to over 100. And then I flew to San Francisco and it was 65. And you began to understand artificiality and artificial heat domes and artificial cooling systems. We know there's the fog in San Francisco, but you can engineer the fog. You can engineer and steer the fog. You can amplify and augment the fog. We know now, like last night, I was in Ville Platte for the open house. And you can just watch the sky darken, and the temperature must have dropped 20 degrees. It was 100 because the air conditioner wasn't working in my classroom, and I was, making my work order, and it's like, not going to move today, just not going to really unpack any boxes because don't want to get overheated. Sorry, mosquitoes bit me while I was outside, so I'm touching the area on my ankle where I was bit to make the pain go away. I didn't want to spray myself down for being outside 30 seconds, so of course you get bit by 2 or 3 mosquitoes. Well, sometimes the mosquitoes now hang out inside too. Anyway, the sky just turned dark, and before you know it, I was wishing I had left earlier because the amount of water, the amount of precipitation, it was just clear, solid, like a liquid gray. The sky was covered. And I spoke to my aunt, and my aunt told me she had got no warning from her weatherman. So this storm just kind of came. It appeared, as it were. So I had seen at the park, the Brown Park in Upper Lafayette, like a little just rainbow emanation, just colors coming off the clouds. And I had learned that when you use microwave frequencies, like the 5G tower frequencies and the Doppler NexRad radar frequencies, when you use those frequencies to reduce graphene oxide, to take the oxide group away, make it more like pure graphene, it will emanate a purple color. It'll luminesce purple or violet, and it will become superconductive. So last night I watched the sky like bright turn bright violet or purple, and then lightning at the same time. So we got clear proof that last night's lightning shower was graphene and graphene oxide. That's the way you can get intense storms very quickly, is that you geoengineer the sky, you aerosolize the graphene and graphene oxide in conjunction with whatever else you typically are doing. It seems as though there's maybe a coal fly ash mixture that if you want just to create the heat dome and just trap the heat with a blanket of these sort of oxides, these salt-like metallic oxides like strontium, barium, aluminum oxides, and they kind of hang out in the lower atmosphere and create a heat shield, a heat dome, a heat blanket that really traps the heat at night, so it becomes extra hot. It's supposed to be reflecting the heat, but it seems to intensify the heat. So that's just been something I concluded. The graphene skies was something Dane Wigington had put out there in 2022, and we just see it confirmed. And now that we know it luminesces when it's reduced, and it can be reduced by using microwave frequency. So now, and we know that the 5G towers, I said, put out energy in that frequency bandwidth. So it all kind of makes sense. You aerosolize the graphene oxide, then you reduce it with the microwave frequencies. It becomes superconductive. You get a more violent storm. And of course, graphene can also artificially nucleate ice, so you could lower the temperature pretty quickly. I mean, that's something I've seen this summer just while running. It's gone from 95 to like 75, 80, and it's quite a dramatic jump. And we're used to the 95. It's not something we like. We are used to it. To see it change so quickly, and without much warning, when a system was more, to watch a system be more manufactured than just kind of slowly come over, watching it become created is magnificent to a certain degree. And owning the weather by 2025, I mean, that's what the Air Force put out there in '96. Weather is a force multiplier, owning the weather by 2025, and they're doing so. They have done so. Kudos to military industrial complex for, and maybe they're even using AI now to do it. Kudos. Maybe it is artificial general intelligence, which I doubt, but I certainly believe that AI could be in charge at this point. So yeah, that's one thing we've determined, that the weather is completely being controlled, and that the West is being put into a drought state, and the center and the East, we're getting flood. Like, we've got so much, we've almost a year's worth of rain here in Louisiana. Uh, and so the weather is completely being controlled. Meanwhile, Trump is setting up a fight with BRICS. We've encircled China, and we're refusing to make peace with Russia because Russia has very clear terms for peace in Ukraine, based upon denazification and disarmament of Ukraine, just like we would want any troop stationed in Mexico to be disarmed. It's pretty close to us, and we wouldn't want Mexico, being armed by China or anything like that. So Ukraine. I mean, I should say Russia has had very clear terms. They entered the conflict in a very limited way, expecting to be able to negotiate an end to the conflict. Now they've had to go almost all the way to capturing the capital city of Kiev, and that was not their intention based upon the military force they initially set out to use, and how that force has been ramped up and amped up to a force that's now able to truly conquer, even if only for the purpose of allowing Russia to absorb the Russian-speaking areas of Ukraine, and then and then for there to be a two-state solution, so to speak, as opposed to having one sovereign Ukraine that would just respect the Russian speakers of Donetsk and Lugansk. Russia will just absorb Donetsk and Lugansk to ensure and that's not originally what they intended, but that will be what happens now, because the United States and Europe have been unwilling to negotiate sincerely. And so in Gaza, you have not the same thing, but you have a similar it's disingenuousness. It's just lying, plain and simple. And the rest of the world is begging to be disabused of all the lies that the United States and Israel continue to tell. And it seems as though maybe 1 month longer before something has to give, but then you don't know what that something is. People have to be moved forcefully moved, because there'll be no alternative. There'll be no food, and there's too much fear of death just to go get the food. People will finally, I guess, relent and leave the civilians. That will still leave the soldiers, so it will not be finished. The civilians will be left without many other options. That's what we see in Gaza. Trump is determined to fight this BRICS growing economic world power, BRICS is an economic world power that has subtly manifested due to the current IMF, World Bank, sort of Anglo-American, German, Western Illuminati, House of Rothschild banking establishment, and the United States military and the NATO military that have kind of grown around it as they seek to take countries' resources. BRICS with Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and about 22 other countries have now established, including Iran, Thailand, and many others, that they've established themselves as a clear alternative to the United States hegemony in our military and our weather warfare. And rather than simply come to terms, and we are going to clearly threaten China with war, continue to threaten Russia with war, try to break up Iran as best we can. This is on a internal level. This is the ego, if you will, the left hemisphere of the human brain, controlling the right hand. This is represented by the United States in the Western Hemisphere, the left side of the brain. This was Carl Johann Kahnemann's work, who had this idea that the pole shift was when our consciousness reorients itself to dominance of the right hemisphere, of the left side, if you will, of our being, instead of the right hand. Not left-handed dominance, but at least balance. And that's what we see on the world stage. We see China and Russia and India, all these countries over in Asia, where the real population of the planet, it resides there in China, Russia, and India. And that's what has to happen internally within our psyche, within our brain. We're ready to have our theory of mind come from the sensory parietal junction, or the temporal parietal junction in the right hemisphere. It's time for a new theory of mind. That new theory of mind is based upon the human energy field. And so this paradigmatic shift into our thinking is happening concomitantly with the shift over in power of planetary hegemonic economic power and military might. And we still see the last fight of the left hemisphere of the brain in the United States, the ego, the left brain dominant ego, trying to maintain its control. But we're learning how to return to breathing in the pranayama. We're learning about the hara line to the ID point, 3.5 feet above the brain, and aligning to that hara point, and understanding that laser line will go down through us, through to the core of the planet, and that the planet has a consciousness, just like the sun has a consciousness, and it's coming into contact with the consciousness of the planet at the planetary core, and allowing that to connect to our hearts. You see, that's up to the crown chakra, so we connect to our higher self and really can allow our higher self to connect to the earth, which is what it's kind of what our mission is as these star seeds, or these indigo children, light workers, is to help the earth raise her consciousness, to help the living biosphere integrate these 5D frequencies from our galaxy without allowing the ego to turn it into fear-based control. That's why the ego is letting go, and the whole theory of mind based upon the left hemisphere and the left temporal parietal junction is giving away to a new theory of mind stationed on the other side of the brain, the right hemisphere's temporal parietal junction. We know the right hemisphere is more closely related to the left ventricle of the heart, and that's where the toroidal vortex that creates our unique human energy field is being powered right there by the heart, by that heart vortex. And we have our neurons connecting our gallbladder to our pancreas, to our liver, and that all these organ systems are meant to communicate with one another and with the heart. And that communication really achieves the health and homeostasis in the body. That's what we're meant to achieve, this inner telepathy as well as outer telepathy, all through a new theory of mind that's based upon the field. And what's in the field is, of course, the H plus ions, the protons, that nourishes you and gives your body energy. And as you expel, you're expelling carbon dioxide and also more of these H plus ions, and they're floating around in a plasmic sea or a plasmic wind. And it's all held together by the electromagnetic field produced by your heart that also has the water vapor, and this field moves in a liquid like way. It goes up your right side of your body and then down your left side of the body and up the back and then down the front in this wave like form. That's what this qigong figure eight energy is supposed to do. And that's the real embodiedness, that's the groundedness that allows for the male and female aspects of our psyche, which is what the AI system will not be able to understand. How does our thinking actually work? It has a male and female aspect. That's what the raw material suggests. That you have in the tarot, you have the magician card. That's the number one. That's the magical male aspect of creativity that has a brand new idea. But prior to that is always this stirring of the imagination by the unconscious. And that's the real female aspect that gives birth to a new idea. That the female always chooses the male, that you're always aroused by the unconscious at just the correct time to look and see it's 5:55 or it's 3:33. So that's what I argue is actually happening to us psychologically. We're all becoming regrounded to the earth, reconnected to our heart and to the right hemisphere of our brain. And this is helping us just to relax into the changes that are happening as the United States world empire more or less goes up in smoke. It's a natural changing of the guard. It's good for our awakening. We're also awakening to the gray aliens and their agenda to have a hybrid species. That's what Linda Moulton Howe has been doing videos about of late. And it's a nice dovetail with Elena Danaan. Elena Danaan has been, I don't want to say under attack, but she's come under a lot of criticism by some of her previous allies like Dan Winter and Michael Salla. And it's unclear. It's yes, some of her material does indeed seem fanciful, but for 4 years, they were on board. These two, and they were champions. And then quite recently, they've decided that no, there was the real source was Swaru from the Taygeta, the Pleiades, that they came out before Lena Danaan, and she more or less plagiarized her material about the Prime Directive from Swaru. That's what Michael Salla reported, I think, just today on his YouTube channel about 5D Galactic Federation. It's just a slightly different conception of the Galactic Federation with the less militaristic conception of the Galactic Federation than what Elena Danaan is putting out there. She has maintained that the Galactic Federation had to crack the gray alien hive mind code, because whenever we would defeat a little gray alien brigade, the queen or whatever would disconnect them, so we could never get to her. Eventually, we were able to capture some and crack the code, and then we were able to send a virus, very much like in Independence Day, to the queen, and that eventually destroyed the hive. This was the Borg, if you will, that was coming to assimilate us and then replace us with the hybrid race. Now, this, unfortunately, is what Linda Moulton Howe has been reporting on of late. We know Whitley Strieber has his 1987 book Communion laid the foundation for this, that the Greys either were us from the future, or that they needed our help, or they were going to help us and fix the earth. Now they just basically become the Anunnaki, as if they were They're a completely different group than the Anunnaki. They're not the bearded bros with the tree of life and a pine cone pineal gland, um, in Iran and Iraq and Egypt. That's not in Turkey. Göbekli Tepe. The Anunnaki, with Enlil and Anki, those are our original forefathers. And yes, they fought, and they Enlil flooded the planet, and there was a catastrophe that caused humanity to have to go underground and get help from the ant people in the American Southwest, and to go underneath Turkey, or build an ark, and humanity had to be restarted after that with Sumeria and in Egypt. So the gray aliens are not the same entities as the Anunnaki. They came later in our story. They came with the Roswell crash in 47 and made a deal with the Majestic 12 of our government, the MJ-12, including Hoyt, Vandenberg, and Vannevar Bush, two of the more famous members of the MJ-12 during Truman's presidency. They came back. The Greys were always were apparently part of a deal with a breakaway civilization that the Nazis made contact and connected with the advanced Nordic race from Aldebaran, who was actually already working in cahoots with the reptilians, if you will. Like they started out trying to talk to some Nordic folks, Maria Orsic, and then they in Sumerian, and later on they realized they had got a bigger fish on the hook than they originally intended. By that point, it was too late for the Nazis. The reptilians decided to work with them. So you have the reptilians and the Aldebaran Nordic-like extraterrestrials, and then even a group of the gray aliens all seem to be working in cahoots. This is the group that makes contact with Eisenhower's administration as well in the 50s. They apparently have a base down in Antarctica, and Admiral Byrd is repelled by them in 47. They fly over the White House, and they begin doing abductions of Betty and Barney Hill in 61. That's where we the Betty and Barney Hill story. The Greys take his sperm, take her eggs. He dies only 8 years later. She draws the map of Zeta Reticuli, where the Greys are from, and she lives a long life until 2004. They were an interracial couple of some note, and we're, you don't call them bigwigs, but we're trying to do good in the world. And Barney Hill's story, it's a shame how he dies not that long, 8 years after he's abducted, and he sees these Nazi-like figures as well as the gray aliens. And I'm pretty sure he mentioned seeing a reptilian figure as well, all on board the ship, that they're abducted while going home to Portsmouth, around Lancaster, New Hampshire. They're abducted, and they have missing time. And it's not like they made money. The story obviously kills to a certain degree. This event helps to kill Barney Hill. They didn't make money off it. So in the 50s, you have people like Valiant Thor coming, and you have George Van Tassel and George. I got really both George. I think they're anyhow Van Tassel and Adamski. I think they are both Georges. Inventor pilot types making contact with advanced extraterrestrials who release philosophy of a positive nature, trying to uplift us. The 50s were a very hopeful time. Although we had the Soviet threat and China, the country was positively predisposed to extraterrestrials, our space brothers. They seem to have made contact with us following, unfortunately, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we had, even in the story of Valiant Thor, he lived in the Pentagon for 3 years, according to the book. So whether or not that's true or not, it was a more open time for extraterrestrials to come and assist us. They were human looking. They were human like. Then, right after the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, the age of the Greys and abduction began. And so that's even going back to X-Files and South Park. It was those kind of extraterrestrials. They were mocking it with South Park, and they were saying, I want to believe with X-Files, but it wasn't the Nordic extraterrestrials. Although, of course, some of those even were evil. They're not the ones from Sirius B. They're not our Anunnaki. They're not the Elohim. They're not from the Pleiades. These are the Greys from Zeta Reticuli and other places. So the Greys have a complicated history with us. They're the beings that are reported to be mutilating cattle. They're the ones that ultimately are the henchmen of these other beings, and they're the ones trying to hybridize with us. This is the what Whitley Strieber uncovered, and he fathered children. This is his whole story. It's important because while the planet is apparently dying, it looks as though there might be some kind of plan to give the planet to a hybrid race of gray extraterrestrials. It no longer looks to me like this planet is being cared for. It looks like the oceans are being superheated and intentionally between the use of the harp and then the creating of these heat domes. If you know you had the potential to cool the environment with the geoengineering, and we know it's instead being used to create massive heating, then you have to suggest that the goal is not to preserve oxygen-based life from the oceans. It's somehow to terraform this planet and give it to a new population. And I think that's something humanity has to unite and stand up against. I don't think we need to wait upon any galactic federation, any galactic group, because the good guys are waiting for us to do it. We do need to unite. I mean, this whole thing with Trump and Epstein, that makes you just feel sorry for this man, this pitiful man who's worried about his money and his ego and protecting that much more than doing anything good for the country. He's just up there acting pathetically and giving weapons to anybody and everybody as his last acts as a human being. These are the acts he'll be known for, to completely lying to us about what he would do when he became president. So it's time for humans to just unite and stand up and shake hands with all the other human beings on the planet and just hug. And we've all been through a very traumatic series of events, from coronavirus, COVID, to where we are with World War III. And nobody has wanted any of this with the control of the weather, the destruction of the planet. We all have to just unite and just hug each other. It's really not that hard. Just say, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum.